Commercial banks already in the market and 20 new payment banks waiting in the offing to pounce into the market. The only constant that's now there in the Indian financial space is competition. And existing players have no choice but to brace up and chalk out their own path to survive in the market. So be it the adoption of technology or providing more services to consumers, it's all happening in the banking space. But the big boys definitely seem to be ready to take up this challenge. And speaking at the 9th annual Mint Banking Conclave, Uday Kotak, Aditya Puri, Chanda Kochar and P.S. Jayakumar of Bank of Baroda accept that there will be blood on the street, but are confident that they will survive.
It is possible for players to continue with strategy, and in a way, competition opens it up, but leads to risks of fragmentation. And Tamal, I just want to bring one other point. In the Indian banking and financial services industry, thanks to the regulator and the government, so far, we have not had any mortality. We have not seen any death. But as we increase competition, as we see 21 new banks come in, including plus the 2 new banks which have come in, and the existing banks, how ready is the Indian political and social and civil society to deal with the other side of competition, which is mortality? And that is also a very important question we need to ask ourselves at this conference as we talk about competitiveness.
So you are seeing some blood on the street?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you have competition, there will be blood.
Nobody has a monopoly over this. The network is available to everybody else, and we have a customer base. So if you look at it, there are 2 parts. One is that the network has changed the way you're likely to behave. I think Mundra Saab mentioned it, that if you change the way you function, that's one part of digitization where you can come out. The key is convenience, pricing, and trust. So if you change the way you function, we give a loan in 10 seconds. I don't think too many people can beat it. We give a top-up loan at the press of a button. We've changed an ATM. You can get a loan on the ATM. You can get a call back or whichever way you want to. And on the other side, the ability that the network gives you when people transact on the network is to structure your products and deliver them in a manner that you can come down to a customer segmentation of 1. So I don't think this change is threatening. I think people will have a lesson as they come and start to compete in the market, that the existing players, if they change, so you had players like, I think Uday mentioned, the HMVs and the borders, etc., who didn't understand the change. But if you change your model, I have the scale already to be lower cost. So I think we're in for a great time. You can get a few more banks coming in. Will there be blood in this change world? Yes, there will be, and there should be. But I'd look at it on a bright basis.
Look at Bank of Baroda. It's got a fairly an excellent franchise in terms of all the distribution, good customer base, so on and so forth. It's been ahead of the public sector banks in terms of adapting to new technologies. There are gaps, but they can be filled up. Yes, there is competition. They are working more effectively in consumer finance, in various forms of retail lending. Frankly, we have no share there. So I see this whole competition issue as saying that we should consider ourselves as a challenger rather than as one that is being challenged. That's my take on all of these things. Now, specifically coming down to the issue of how and about the public sector itself, I'd like to make a few points. First, we're getting extremely good face time with the government and the Reserve Bank of India, and that's very encouraging. From an employee perspective, it's still a relatively young bank, about 35 years as average age. There are many bright people in the system over there, and the turnover of employees is less relative to other institutions, so the effect of training and development will be far longer come through. And the third thing is that the adaptability is there, or the alignment of the people is there, I would think. It's a question of leadership and taking it forward.
First of all, it's not something that can disrupt the banking system in that sense. You look at the NPA problem, I think it gets magnified by looking at certain large exposures and certain large projects. We have to remember that the entire retail or the consumer side of the industry is very, very stable in terms of credit quality. And, depending on the bank's proportions of how much consumer-led assets they have, I think that part of the book continues to do very, very well. As far as certain large exposures are concerned, I think we have to keep in mind the fact that we are transiting, or we have transited as an economy from 9% growth rates, and capacities were being built, assuming not just 9% growth rates at that time, but continuing to be growing at 9% for decades to come. From there on, the economy slid down to 4.5%, 5%, coming back gradually to 7.5%. Coupled with that was the fact that there were delays in implementation of projects, reallocations, allocations of natural resources, backward integration issues, and so on and so forth. Coupled with that was the fact that the commodity prices the world over are so low. And not just that, whatever you saw as even say steel prices, oil prices 6 months ago are very different from what they are today. So I think at this point in time, you have to realize that all this will give certain stress in case of certain projects. But at the same time, we must remember two things for India. One is that all the investment that has gone in has actually created assets on the ground.
The biggest bankers talking about the road ahead, the challenges they're facing, and the new kind of competition, the never envisaged coming in from mobile phones. With that,